we've identified really 5 key items, best bit of information within the 5 categories of the best way to transfer your mold. And the first one is always going to be research and visit with your potential foundry or supplier. That's how you build the relationships. That's how you understand who they are and what service they're going to provide you, and if they can solve the problems that you present.
Yeah, definitely. So once you kind of understand what you're looking for and you visit and you build that relationship, you can start kind of getting down the road of, hey, what does your mold look like? Can you get pictures? Because sometimes it can be a touchy subject on whether you can provide that information of that mold from the current supplier you're using.
Pictures are always best with dimensions and very detailed on health of that mold, and describe that to the best of your ability to your sales consultant, right? Because internally we're going to transfer that to our engineering team and get with those folks and say, hey, this is the problem statement that presented. This is the mold that we could possibly be bringing into organization. Is it fit for casting, right? So we want their input as well. We have a lot of experts in the confines of Batesville Products can walk us through that.
Yeah. And if you can't get pictures of the mold and there is no tooling solid model that exists, some steps that a foundry can take would be to reverse engineer the design of the mold so they can understand what they're working with. So when they receive the mold in, there's some steps they can take, like scanning the mold, reverse engineering it so they have a solid file of the mold itself. The reason for doing that is so that you can run a finite element analysis on the mold so that you can understand, based off of what your foundry is capable, you can apply the metal temps you're able to hold at your facility. If there is adjustments to the gating you can make without touching the part itself, or adding either risers or anything like that in general. And then also understanding metal temp, mold temp, flow time, tilt time. Do you want a steady tilt time or variability tilt time? Applying all those things that your foundry knows how to do to get the best casting you can from the existing mold you have.
Yeah, absolutely. And to go to your point, Rachel, about the mold quality is how many shots or how many pores. Do you have an idea of how many shots or pores that mold has against it? Because it's really going to paint the picture of its health.
You two had mentioned things such as, both from the part and the mold perspective, of understanding, picture, size of the mold. Does it fit in the press that you're transferring it to? Is it coming off a press that's a special press, right? A lot of different things that go into, hey, does this fit at current vendor A and current vendor B, or are they completely different entities here? And there's a lot that needs to get figured out.
I think the next step would definitely be, if we've established as a vendor for our potential customers, let's get a quote with a piece price, the tooling cost, any additional tooling cost that Batesville Products may have to do to onboard that into our organization specifically, and then the lead time that would come along with doing a run for the potential customer.
What would be involved in maybe a tooling cost that you would see from a tooling transfer?
You'll see retrofitting costs, so us doing just what I said before, where you're repairing the mold, replacing any of the venting, bolts, adding any quick change plates, stuff like that. And then FEA analysis. You'll see some fixturing, whether you need to have a straightening fixture or a machining fixture or a coating rack, things like that, depending upon what your secondary requirements are, but also is included as a first article inspection part as well. Right, so steps to retrofitting your mold. So there's a couple different things you can do. Here at BPI, we encompass retrofitting under variable different things. So one is just making sure all of the working parts of the mold are replaced and looking good, like vents, bolts, pins, all of that stuff. But also what includes is, again, what we talked about is doing the FEA to make sure that we're running the mold correctly and that the mold fits up to our press correctly.
The worn parts are replaced, right? So that would be part of the scope of the work, ensuring that when we do pour your parts, they come out of the mold in the quality-minded fashion that they need to be.
Yeah. And then I mentioned earlier doing glue fitting, but that's always a nice step to take to make sure that your Part has got fresh parting line, not excessive flash going on. It's just a nice way to repair or maintain the mold, especially when you get a new one in. Or a used new one.
Right, because we don't have records of their preventative maintenance programs at another vendor.
Yeah.
So that allows us to get familiar with the mold, right? So that when we do launch it into production, it's successful. So once we go live with the part, it stops at our quality department, Tim. We do designated PPAPs by our customers. Some have different levels, as you know. FAIs are all parts. We do first articles on all key dimensions. It could be we could do full quality checks on one critical dimension or two critical dimensions. It's really going to be customer designated. However, we do x-ray testing, heat treat analysis. So there's a good catalog of testing that we do prior to releasing it to production, Tim.
Yes, and it's all driven too by the needs of the customer. So if there's a specific testing you need that is not currently quoted or provided, we can certainly add that to the FAI terms. But at the end of the day, it's really kind of what is the end use of the part and what do you expect to see in each production run you receive, and do we need to repeat that every time? So for example, measuring the critical dimensions for each part, or is it just specific dimensions?
Yeah, and finding that out ahead of time is the most important thing, just like we did on this slide here, is what are your critical specs? That's a question that we would ask it early on side of the project. I think we've had a few customers that we've onboarded, Tim, that had a few quality criteria that weren't necessary. So being the experts in our field, we noted that, right? That's a cost reduction for our customers. And also it's not so much of a schedule drain when we're doing unnecessary steps. So that's important to know.